One of the most common complaints that I hear from sales managers has to do with accountability. Why can't my people just do their jobs? Well, there is absolutely a process for creating a culture of accountability. No doubt about it. And coming up next, we'll talk to an expert. This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Hey, welcome to Sales Untraining. Yes, it's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales training brain. And yeah, it needs to be rewired because there are so many things that we do wrong at the corporate level, at the sales management level. And I'm really excited to have Mike Weinberg with me because his books are so on point. Absolutely. If you don't own all 4, big shameless plug for Mike, you need to have them. His latest one is called The First Time Sales Manager. We're going to talk about it. But he also wrote way back in the day, Mike, New Sales Simplified, then Sales Management Simplified, and then hashtag Sales Truth, which is just incredible. And now The First Time Sales Manager. Man, welcome. Great to have you. And we're going to unpack some of the things that are in your new book.
Dude, as excited as you are, I'm more excited to visit with you. So thank you so much for the chance to visit. And it was just fun catching up with you even before we started recording. This is awesome.
Yeah, listen, as I read the new book, I said before we came on, I just had to laugh because these things they're so common. All these things that you point out about first-time sales managers, I mean, on and on and on. And really where I want to unpack, and by the way, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, there's the book, First Time Sales Manager by Mike Weinberg. You Google it, it's going to be at the top of the list. I promise you, he's sold like 8 billion copies already. But I want to talk about chapter 3, man, accountability. Creating a culture of accountability is a real thing, but most sales managers think that accountability begins and ends with the salesperson. You and I both believe it begins with the sales manager. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, this was one of my surprises when I got into management, honestly. I was excited to be a leader, a coach, wanted to help people. I didn't really understand what management meant. And that's why, that's the first chapter I actually give advice, right? The beginning's a setup, and I talk about congratulations, sales manager's the key. And then I talk about how different the job is from the previous job, an individual contributor. And now I'm like, okay, the first thing I want to tell you is this: your most important job is making sure that your people, that they do their job. And as a new manager, I was clueless. Like, I didn't understand it. Now, I worked for great sales leaders and executives and frontline managers that were good at accountability. But somehow in my mind, I didn't get the importance of what it meant to the culture, because sales is about results. And if the manager is not holding you accountable and sticking results under your nose and like shining the light of truth on how you're really doing against your goal and where you rank on the team, and then we'll get to the following components of accountability, then what are you doing? Because if we're not laser focused on goals and results, then how could you have a high performance sales culture if you don't really keep score and everybody knows where they stand? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. I have to ask you, this pops in my head. How many times have you worked with a sales team and the sales manager or the CEO or somebody has said, Mike, we're really not comfortable posting results. It makes people uncomfortable. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard that. I hear it a lot. You hear it, especially during tough economies, and we've all lived through, whether it was the Great Recession or what during the fear, during early COVID, or in the last year or so, where we've had certain segments of the industry really, different industries really struggle, where there's this paternalistic, somewhat communistic feel, like, don't put pressure on them. And I'm like, yeah, sales is different. Like, we don't pay people to do work, to work hours, to log time. We pay them to produce. The reason we let them make more money is because they're driving revenue. So it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work not to keep score. It's nonsensical.
Yeah, it's like the pro athlete that says, hey, coach, I really don't like looking at film and getting a grade. It makes me uncomfortable. That's going to go over really well.
Well, Kelly, so pick up on that point. Like, what do we know about top salespeople? Every one of them, if it's not their number one, it's their number 2 attribute. They're ultra competitive. Yes. Top performers, they keep score. They want to know what the standings are. They want to know where they rank. Like, the only salespeople that don't want to be held accountable are people that are failing or hiding, which would only further our argument that to have the culture and the performance we want, we need to create that environment that repels those people, right? And if someone's ashamed of the sales report, good. And I don't mean that like in a negative, like berating, embarrassing way, but if you're not comfortable with the report being published, then A, change your behavior, put in more effort, up your skills. No one's stopping you, right? You have the freedom to go, you have free agency, go produce more. Or if you're not comfortable and you're way below where you should be, maybe you deselect and go do something else where you're going to feel less pressure or less competition. And that's, to me, that's a win. That's not a loss.
Right. No, I 100% agree. You said something really important just a minute ago when you said, we don't pay people to work hard. I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation. Riggs, I'm putting in 50 and 60 hours a week. And I said, we don't pay you to work hard. We pay you to create results. And some people have to work harder to get those results. And clearly there's a correlation between effort and intensity and results, but never make the mistake that just because you log a bunch of hours, you're doing your job well.
You'd say that again. I mean, so interesting. I'm flashing through my head. One of my great sales leaders I've ever worked with is a guy named Mike Jeffrey. And I feature him in the new book because I interviewed him because he's so good. And every time he speaks, I'm taking notes. And one of the things he said in one of my video series where I had him around the table was, a struggling salesperson loves to talk about anything but actual results. They'll tell you how hard they're working, how much their people love them. They'll tell you about all the deals they're supposedly working. They've got every excuse, right? They're really good at selling you on why they're failing. But the thing they don't want to talk about is what actually is on the scorecard. And that's so important. And that leads me to one other point where you got me thinking about this when you're talking about culture. Accountability is not a dirty word. And right. I think there's this fear, like the culture, the safe places, the crazy environments that we operate in today on the periphery have made some people feel like it's wrong to keep score, and we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. I think the one time I want a salesperson uncomfortable, because we do need to encourage their heart. And my mentor would say, sales management is the fine art of balancing, encouraging the heart, and kicking the ass. You need to do both, and great sales managers are adept at that. It's an art. It's a balancing act. But accountability, it's not a dirty word, and it's best done one-on-one in a formal, scheduled, regular sit-down where you're looking at results and pipeline and, if necessary, activity. And what I find, and I'm curious what you see in the companies you're working with, is I'll ask an executive or a sales manager, well, tell me about accountability. What does it look like? And I often get this answer like, well, Mike, come on. We have a culture of accountability here, and I know what everyone's doing, and everyone knows that I know what they're doing, and I've got my finger on the pulse. In fact, I probably talk to every one of my salespeople almost every day, and if not talk, it's email. And they're like, I know, and they know that I know. And I'm like, yeah, but how often do you sit down together one-on-one, and I don't care if it's Zoom or phone or in person, and together look at where they are against their goal and where they are against last year and where they rank on the team, where you just let the numbers speak for themselves. And it's like you're shining the light of truth right onto that report, and you're putting the burden of success on their shoulders where they're carrying the weight.
Yes.
And when I ask that question, they're like, yeah, we don't really do that.
Yeah, we don't really do that.
You know, that's
in fact, you know, for most companies, accountability is really a dirty word. They'll say on the one hand, we just wish our people would take ownership of their work and, you know, do their jobs better. But on the other hand, we don't like the word accountability, Mike, because we interpret that as blame. Who do we blame for the problems? Well, like, accountability is not blame. It's adjusting what you're doing to get a better result, and you take ownership of that. I mean, it's just that simple.
Well, and today I'll tell you what I heard. And it's not as bad today as it was a year ago, but I regularly will have a manager tell me when I ask, why are you not confronting this underperformer with their results? I'm not saying to embarrass them. I'm not saying to raise your voice. I'm not even asking you to threaten them or put them on a plan. I'm asking you to sit down and stick their nose in the results and then transition to the pipeline, because the pipeline's the lifeblood. If they're not working deals, if they're not doing quotes, whatever your business is, because people listening to you have different levels of sophistication and different lengths of sales cycles. But we can all say, at least we know the pipeline is the deals are the customers we're working to get the next round of business. And if we're sitting there with them and their results are poor, particularly over an extended period of time, and the pipeline's not healthy, which means the stuff they're working on doesn't look like it's going to produce business in the future. Because what the manager would tell me, I don't want to have that conversation with Johnny, because if I sit down and show Johnny how he's really doing and turn the heat up a little bit, he might leave. and my immediate response is, and like, continue. Like, what how does that work? Someone who's failing, and you're not willing to show them that they're failing, and you're afraid they might leave. And I'm like, shouldn't you be coaching them up to an acceptable level and doubling up your accountability, or shouldn't you be looking to replace them? Absolutely. But managers don't want to do the hard work. They don't want to deal with the empty territory or the recruiting or the onboarding. So they abdicate and they play prisoner of hope, and they look the other way, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to let it go. Yeah. And that you brought up culture first. What kills a high performance culture more than ignoring underperformance?
Yeah. Mediocrity is a culture killer for sure. Right? If you don't address that. Well, one of the interesting things that you talk about in your book in chapter 3 is something you call a one-on-one meeting. And this is the book that I wrote. We were talking about it before. I wrote One-on-One Management in 2008, like 100 years ago.
You didn't have any more hair in 08 than you have in 23.
No, man, my hair went away like at 30. So, but at chapter 10, the one-on-one meeting, it's something that both you and I were taught by people that we worked for. And we realized, in fact, I will tell you that I didn't know anything about sales management, just like you didn't, and they stuck me in that role. So what I did is probably what you did. I just sort of copied what a good boss had done for me. But let's talk a little bit about one-on-one meetings and how it relates to accountability. It's putting your nose into the numbers and holding you accountable. But give me a sense of what that one-on-one meeting sounds like from your perspective.
And people are going to think I'm crazy when I say this. I think for most salespeople, depending on the sales cycle, you can hold your salespeople accountable in one 10 or 15-minute meeting per month, where you get together and it's not a chit-chat session. It's not coaching. It's not deal strategy. It's not social. It's a data, factual review of actual results against goal and ranking, like we've already talked about. It's a quick dive into the pipeline to look at health, number of deals, little bit of projecting and asking questions about, did you add new things to the pipeline? What did you create? My favorite sales verb is create. And my next question would be, what did you advance? If it's a longer sales cycle, last month, what did you move forward that's closer to becoming a deal? Because if you in this 10 minutes look at real results and transfer that burden of success to their shoulders from yours as the manager, and then you dive into the pipeline to see, are there enough deals brewing or enough quotes? And are there new ones? And are you advancing old ones? If you ask those questions, there's nowhere for someone to hide.
Absolutely.
And what I say is the third part is, if you dive into the pipeline and it's not good, there's not new deals and deals aren't advancing and there's not enough coverage, then I think it's time to dive in on activity. And my mentor, and you had your mentor with your one-on-one meeting, my mentor, this was his framework. His name was Donnie Williams. I stole this from him. He was so good because he didn't want to be a micromanager. He never asked about activity until he looked at your results and he looked at your pipeline. Because if the results were there and you're blowing your numbers out and your pipeline's healthy and you're putting in new deals, he didn't care how many hours you worked or how many miles you drove or how many dials you made. What didn't matter. But, and this is an important but, the moment the pipeline wasn't healthy, even if I made my numbers and I was blowing away my quota, if he looked at me and he's like, Mike, I'm looking at your deals. You don't got enough in here. You're coasting. Grab your calendar. We're going to talk about activity because your pipeline's weak. You've left me no choice. What'd you do last month? Who'd you see? Grab your account list and show me what you got coming the next couple of weeks, because I'm not cool with you not filling up the pipeline.
Right.
And what his brilliance was, because he delayed talking about activity, which most managers start with.
Yes.
You never felt like you were being micromanaged, because he only went there if you earned that level of inspection. Results first, then pipeline, then activity. And if you keep it to the facts and you don't start coaching in this meeting, and my one strong coaching for managers listening to us is, the only sales managers I see that don't get the benefit from this one-on-one, they don't get the lift, they don't get the culture change, is because they turn this 10 or 15-minute meeting into an hour, and they end up doing deal coaching and sales skill coaching and playing cheerleader and letting salespeople make them do their job for them. And by the time the salesperson gets up and walks away from the Zoom or from the face-to-face, they forgot that icky feeling of having to look the manager right in the eye and going, yep, I missed my number. And yep, my pipeline's weak. I better get my act together. Because I want them leaving that meeting, if they're failing, uncomfortable, because that's what's going to cause them to be motivated to change their behavior. So next month when they show up, they're like, hey, look what I did.
Yeah.
Look at these deals I put in the pipeline. And that's what changes culture.
Absolutely. And pro tip from my standpoint is you take that salesperson and you say, here's where your deal pipeline needs to be. And here's where it is right now. There's a gap. And if I'm speaking with you, Mike, what do you think we need to do next to impact that delta? How do you think you want to approach that? Too many times, Mike, in my experience, sales managers are telling salespeople what to do, which means I don't engage brain at all. I just do whatever I'm told, and I can always blame you. But if I ask you what you're going to do to address the delta, now you've got to get into the middle of it and start planning.
You are making me smile because when I would have this meeting, when I was the salesperson with my boss, Donnie, he did exactly what you said. When I missed my number, he would take off his glasses. He would drop them on my desk. He'd be like, Mike, would you like to tell me what happened? And he would let me, take 30 seconds and explain why I crapped the bed. And then he would look at me and he'd go, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
He could have given me ideas. He knew. He could have coached me. But in that moment, he felt the way you felt. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Dude, it's your territory. It's your account list. It's your quota, not mine. And that was his favorite question. I would come up with excuses. Donnie, I have all these clients in Charlotte, and you know what happened in North Carolina last week, and they had all this stuff, and then there was the hurricane, and there's that city's got a lot of problems with advertising. And he's like, I believe you. And what are you going to do about it?
Yes.
You're the CEO of your own business, and I'm here to help you, but where are we going? How are you going to make up for this? And that, I wish, I love to tell that story because so many managers ask me when they're doing accountability, my people have excuses and our factory's behind, or, are we selling to hospitals and they're closed down because of this? I'm like, I get it. But the question back is, I understand, and that's tough. What are you going to do about it?
Yes.
And it changes the locus of control, like who owns this? And of course, then you're going to come back and offer some good coaching questions and suggest. You're not leaving them out there naked. You're not abdicating your responsibility to help them. But it's the message that it's on you. And I love the way you said that. Like you reminded me of that whole story. So.
Well, it's that mindset adjustment that has to happen, right? Because many times sales managers are actually providing the excuses for the salespeople. We complain about the economy and the sales manager says, yes, you're right. Economy's kind of tough. My answer is, listen, there's a reason salespeople get paid what they get paid. We get paid to create results, regardless of circumstances. We're overcomers. That's what we do. That's why we get paid what we get paid.
Okay. I think the last 15-second video clip is going on my Twitter when I get this episode, when you put it out. Like, you just said it. Like, that's as good as it gets.
It's
because, and that's why and you said it, it's to go create business.
Yes.
The job is to be proactive. So
absolutely
Absolutely love it.
He's Mike Weinberg. He's the author of First Time Sales Manager. Make sure you get this book. It's so incredibly good. Well, coming up next, Mike and I are going to talk about the single biggest mistake that companies make with regards to sales leaders and why you've absolutely got to fix it now. Stay with us. Hey, thanks for making Sales Untraining your first listen of the week. And if you find something you like, if you hear something that's interesting, I hope you'll share it with somebody you know. You can find out more about me at bizlockerroom.com or email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Now back to the show. You're basically tearing up $100 bills and throwing them in the trash can. You're paying someone a lot of money, somebody very capable, somebody very good at what they do, to get minimal impact. If you don't have a sales leader who's capable of reinforcing the very things that you're training on, and if you don't make it a part of the plan following the training to do exactly that, how good is it? How effective is it going to be? I mean, do you even measure the impact of your sales training? Or do you just check a box? Hey, welcome back. Sales Untraining with Mike Weinberg, my special guest, 4-time author, a guy who's been around for a very long time, and he and I are so very like-minded. It's really a fun time to be together and have a conversation with him and talk about these things. Mike, one of the things that we talked about is these problems, it's not like the solutions are rocket science. You know, we talk to sales leaders every day and they don't go, holy smokes, this is mind blowing. This is, I've never heard this before.
I've never heard anyone say what we share with them is mind blowing. Like, yeah, that's probably true. Those are the basics. I need to get back to that. So absolutely.
Yeah, I should do that. Well, the big problem systemically with sales training and with sales leaders is what we typically do is take our best salesperson and we say, hey, congratulations, Mike. We've got a regional manager's job open. Love to have you take that job. And you're, yes, of course. I'm exhibit A, as a 31-year-old guy. I'd been the top sales guy in the country for 2 years in a row. We had an opening in the Midwest for a regional sales manager. You're our guy. And I'm like, yes, I am. Of course I am. And I had absolutely no flipping idea what I was doing. And it leads to some real problems. And you talk about it in the book.
Yes, it does. And why don't we just start with this? Because no one tells the top salesperson this when they ask them to move into management. And usually the salesperson's so excited to get promoted and it's an ego thing. But this is the truth, Kelly. I can't say this any plainer. The jobs are polar opposites. The only thing similar about salesperson and sales manager is the word sales. It is a 180. It is a 180. In sales, if you've got a high ego, it's great. It like protects you. You're Teflon. You've got this little, swagger to how you operate. And you don't really rub people the wrong way if you're a little cocky and confident. That same ego in the management role gets old really fast when you want the credit and you want the limelight and you're elbowing your people out of the way and you're bragging about your results instead of your people's results. So like the ego changes. Winning on your own versus winning through your people. Like talk about a radical shift. The hardest thing for me was going from being selfish with my time, where I knew I owned my calendar because I had to take care of my own production, versus when you're a manager, you got to dedicate a whole lot of your time to your other people. So that shift from ego to low ego, from selfish to selfless. And then the hardest thing is learning you got to win through your people. You don't win on your own. And that's what leads to some dangerous stuff. And I know you wanted to go down the path about doing people's jobs because and this is my fault. When I was a new sales manager, I did two things wrong. One, I rushed in without listening enough to what was going on in the business and the people, because I felt like I was under pressure. I was brought into a turnaround situation and they knew I could sell. So I better go out and help everybody sell like me, right? Without really taking the time to understand the situation. And then the other thing was I didn't really understand how to multiply myself. Today it's trendy to say how to scale into people. And that is something I've termed hero mode, where you tend to do instead of coach, you do instead of lead, and you do instead of holding people accountable. And think about you and me as top salespeople. We were winners. In one of our mantras in life, you have this to this day, so do I. But we took this with it from salesperson into sales manager. I'll do whatever the heck it takes to win.
Yes.
And that, while admirable, sinks you as a leader because you end up inserting yourself into every situation and you don't learn how to lead. You just keep doing, and it's untenable. So I'll yield. I'm sure you have 1,000 thoughts on this. So,
well, right down that path, we call it promotion without preparation. And you're right. They're two completely different skill sets. And we say that, as a salesperson, you are a doer. As a sales leader, you're a developer. And when you become a super doer, all you are is a self-limiting team of one. You just have some assistants working for you, right? So now instead of leading a team and multiplying their impact, you're like, I got this. You guys just hold my beer. I got this, right? And I'll take care of the rest of it. And you see it over and over because leadership, when we talk to leaders, we define it as the art and science of getting things done through other people. And, when I was a salesperson, I got things done for me, for myself. But you see it over and over. I become a sales manager. And listen, what I know, Mike, is I got promoted because I was good at selling. Without any change in mindset, what would I naturally assume I'm going to be doing as a sales leader? Just more of the same, rinse and repeat, be the best salesperson out there, right? And we see it really erode the capacity of sales teams.
100%. And there's reasons that this happens. I call it hero mode, where you're focused on being the hero.
Oh, yeah.
Would you call it super doer?
Yeah, super doer.
Phrase? Okay,
yeah.
That I never heard that. I'm using that. I'll give you credit. I'll give you a little footnote. But super doer, it's hero. And there's reasons we do it. Sometimes it's pressure. Sometimes it's ego. Sometimes there's a dangerous reality that is the manager. We realize we don't really have sufficient talent on the team. Like the people we've inherited may not be able to get the job done.
Right.
So instead of working hard to coach them up, we just kind of insert ourselves and we sell for them, which makes you feel good temporarily because you're winning a few deals. But can you do 7 people's jobs? I mean, I tell the story in the book, in that chapter, in chapter 5, of this woman that stood up in this giant workshop and told the story with her voice shaking, how her first year as a manager, she was so overzealous and so committing to win. She sold everything for everybody. She sent 2 of her people the President's Club.
Right.
And everyone's like, okay, what's the story? Like, yeah. And then she says real quietly, and this year I had to fire both of those reps that I sent to club. And the room was like, ooh. Wow. And she said, I'm probably the first manager in history that had to fire 2 people who went to President's Club. And the reason is because they didn't earn President's Club. They weren't even capable of receiving my coaching, but I didn't know that till a year later when I took my hands off the wheel and stopped doing their job for them. And I'm like, I've never heard a better example of the danger of when you step in and try to do everybody's job, because that's not sustainable. It's not scalable. It's not enjoyable. It kills the culture and it kills the manager. Like you have enough to do with just doing your management job. How can you be 6 salespeople and the manager, right?
Right. Absolutely right. Well, footnote to that is the real truth is there are some salespeople who are unicorns. I mean, they're so good at what they do, but they have no idea how they do it. They're just naturals. They have it, whatever it is. I mean, it's a very, very small percentage of people, but because they're the top salesperson, Mike, we stick them in that role. They absolutely should never be sales leaders because they don't have the patience to coach. They don't actually know how they do what they do, so they don't know how to teach someone else. I mean, how often do you run into something like that?
A lot. It's interesting. One of my friends is a guy named Dominic Testo, top sales guy out of upstate New York. And he had the most interesting take when he read the new book. He said, Mike, you affirm for me why I keep declining the opportunity to go into management. Are you okay if I write a review of this book and I say, this book helped me decide to stay out of management? I enjoy the freedom and the fun of being an individual contributor. And I'm like, yes. And there's not enough, Kelly, you said it. We're not coaching or preparing people to do it. We're not mentoring them well. And then we make the automatic assumption, let's take our best person, regardless of their gift set or their wiring, and put them into a management role. I would make the case, and I mean, this is a strong statement, and I don't have data to back this up, but I would think sometimes we're better off putting a more average person who has better leadership qualities and has a lower ego and is willing to subdue that ego and invest in people. I mean, some of the best coaches in the world, they were not all pros. Look at the coaches on the sidelines in the NFL or the ones who coach the greatest. Did Tiger Woods golf coach ever succeed on tour? No. But is he a heck of an instructor, coach, whether it's psychology or nutrition or swing? Like, you with me on that? So
absolutely.
I think there needs to be more thought and more prep. I think you said that well earlier, before we just rush someone who's a great individual contributor into a management role, because the jobs are opposites.
Absolutely. Superstars rarely make effective coaches. In fact, bit of trivia, there's exactly one Hall of Fame football player who won a Super Bowl as a coach. One. That's it. And you would think, wow, it would just be loaded with them, right? Hall of Fame football players become coaches. And
so good. I did not know that stat.
Yeah, it's Mike Ditka, by the way, Chicago Bears. I mean, it's incredibly rare because, as you know, the primary role of sales leadership is coaching, training, developing. They go from doer to developer. And if you don't have the patience or the capacity or the skill, you can't learn the skill of coaching, you're pretty much dead in the water, aren't you?
We are so aligned on this, Kelly. I always say we have 2 levers. We have 2 levers as a sales manager, aside from getting the right people on the job. But the 2 really big levers we have to drive culture and drive results are coaching and development and accountability.
Yes.
And if you would just, and this is where I scream at senior executives. I mean, I lose my mind. because the executives are burying the sales managers in all kinds of corporate crap. And they drag them to all these meetings and they send them 4 million spreadsheets and they get marketing emails all day long. And you know what sales managers have no time to do? Freaking coach their people or do accountability meetings. And they look at me and they go, could you train the salespeople? We really don't have enough sales. And I'm like, why don't you let your sales managers go back to the job of developing and working alongside and holding their people accountable? You would be amazed what would happen if you took your sales managers and let them actually lead their teams instead of doing all this corporate crap that you bury them in every day. And if you're a sales manager right now, you can send me $1 and applaud for telling the truth and trying to get you freed up so you can win and have some quality of life again.
Absolutely. The 4 most dangerous words in any leader's vocabulary. I don't have time. Man, I'm doing everything else except the stuff that's really, really important. Good stuff from Mike Weinberg. He's the author of First Time Sales Manager, several other books, New Sales Simplified. Must absolutely be on your list, in your bookshelf. Sales Management Simplified and Sales Truth will blow your mind. I don't really think I need to promo your books, Mike, because I think everybody's already got them. But just in case there's one rogue person out there. My
publisher thanks you, and I'm really appreciative of your slightly inflated view of me. So I thank you for the kind, the kind words. And it's just energizing talking life and sales with you. What a treat.
Absolutely. Hey, tell people where they can learn more about you, Mike.
Yeah, online, MikeWeinberg.com, WEINBERG, and on the socials, it's Mike_Weinberg.
Hey, very good to have you as a guest. I look forward to doing it again. Hey, thanks for joining us right here on Sales Untraining. We'll see you next time.
Sales Untraining is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.